Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. There's Bugsy Malone, the one you come to see, leading the charge. Hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with people that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button on the video, but only if you enjoy the content. It does really help the channel if you do enjoy it and you do hit the button. But I don't want a like for the sake of it. Or do I? No, you got to earn it. So only if you like it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It's free to do. Helps the channel as well. 18,700 people, give or take, have gone before. Welcome back to them. Welcome to the new. Hit the notification bell. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. And we're talking about midfielders today, guys. I've got a second video coming out. I think it's going to be out tomorrow. I've got to do it in front of the computer about trying to solve our left wing issue with regards to Richarlison. Identified 5 or 6 really cool players that have the kind of the je ne sais quoi, the kind of key integral components, the competencies and the capabilities to get us more juice from the squeeze in that area of the pitch. But that's for tomorrow. Today we've got to talk about some transfer news, views and clues regarding the outgoing of Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg and possibly Ollie Skip at some point this season. Hopefully one of them might go in January to free up some money and to allow us to bring in a player that fits the system better. And the other one maybe will be decided regarding his future in the summer. Before we get to who the people coming in will be or could be, let's give you my rationale. Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, look, I love the guy. I think he's a wonderful workhorse. You know, sometimes you need workhorses alongside your show ponies. He is a workhorse. He's never let us down. He's always been there fitness-wise. He's built like a machine. He's unbreakable. And he's a brilliant player for brilliant systems that suit him. He's more of a double pivot type of system. I just don't think that what he has is what we need. I don't think he's got the mobility to play in the second 8, to be able to get up and help, but get back and support the fullbacks. I don't think he has the tackling tenacity to play in that 6 role when he's left, when everyone's been committed and he's the guy who's got to sit and protect the back 2. I don't think necessarily he has that what's necessary in that role. And I don't particularly think he's progressive or creative enough to find that killer pass as often. He's got it within him to find it, but I don't think it comes out as often as it needs to be found for the specific roles in the 6 or the lower 8. So I do think he's a great player. I just don't think he's horses for courses. And I'm not sure that he's the right horse for our particular course anymore. I wish him well. I think he should go and find the team. Atletico Madrid were interested in him in the summer. I think he wanted to go there, but they couldn't find the money. And 30 million euros is probably the money we're going to ask. And I think that's reasonable money for a player of his calibre. And remember, guys, I've been speaking about this. It is so important that Tottenham seem to start to get some money back from player trading on the sales. You know, we are spending about 80% right now of our, or 70%, 75% of our revenue every year on the combination of wages and fees and transfer fees, agents' fees and transfer fees. And despite all of our revenue stream generation, that limits us to, obviously you can push money around the plate from clever accounting practices, but it does limit us to what we can do. Unless we can get better with our raising of capital through selling assets. And as much as we're doing wonderful things with the youth system right now, and I think that in a couple of years' time, when some of these players mature, they may not be good enough at Tottenham, or they may not suit Tottenham at the time, but they will be able to be sold for 10 million here, 20 million there, whatever, with some sell-on percentages guaranteed, etc. And it's a nice little thing to be having in the background, but that's not brewed yet, that's not ready yet. So we have to look into the first team if we want to find the right square pegs for square holes, and we've identified that maybe Hojbjerg isn't one of them, then I don't think we can loan these players out with options. I think we need to sell them if we can, which is tricky because as is quite often the case right now, a lot of Europe, at least the clubs that are at our sort of standard, the clubs that would look for Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, they're broke. Which is a problem, but it's a problem we're going to have to face head on. Anyway, the story is that Hojbjerg wants out. Atletico Madrid might come back in. He was also targeted by Fulham. He didn't want to go to Fulham. He sees his level higher than them and wants to go to teams that are competing, which is fair enough. But we hope that we can find a resolution. I would argue quickly before I get on to who we could bring in, the same argument could be made for someone like Ollie Skipp. I feel like I've been a little bit too lenient on Ollie Skipp over the last 18 months with regards his potential. I feel like because he's one of our own and come through the youth system, I feel like potentially when he's had good games, good moments, I've latched onto them and remembered them more than the kind of ineffectual efforts. I think that's silly of me. And I feel like maybe now I'm realising that he just isn't quite the level that we want to get to. If we are trying to look at the league and saying, could we compete? Can we be there or thereabouts? Or are we Champions League level? I don't think Ollie Skipp is. And as much as you've got to have some love for him because he's one of our own, shake hands with reality time for Sean. And I land on the idea that maybe we could liquidate him as well and get some decent money to a team that's maybe newly promoted next season, a sort of lower half of the Premier League team, a Crystal Palace, a Fulham, someone like that level is probably a good level for Ollie Skipp. But if we really want to kick on, then I think we need to look above and raise our level, the depth to a higher level than where it currently is. And I think that there's two players there that you could sell and get some money for. But obviously selling both of them or even one of them would leave us short in the midfield. And so we need to look at someone to come in who can either play a variety of roles but still be of a higher level, or pick a player that's a specialist in one particular role but is also of a super high level who just isn't getting the game time where they currently are. And there's two names that I've seen Tottenham being linked with, and both of them are interesting to me. Let's start with the first one, Conor Gallagher. We were linked with him last summer. He still hasn't obviously left Chelsea. For what it's worth, he's played 8 games this season, and according to SofaScore, he is their second best player according to the SofaScore rating algorithm for his contribution. And look, the thing about Conor Gallagher is, I really like him. I think he's a bundle of energy. I think he covers every blade of grass, similar to Papa Sarr, but he can play absolutely everywhere. He can play as a DM if necessary, he can play as an 8, and he can play as a 10. And that versatility, that utility, is necessary if you're going to try and buy players and bring players in who don't necessarily command an immediate starting position in the team, but have the ability to play in a number of different positions should there be an injury to any of them. Then I feel like that's a better way of creating a compelling argument to sell the player on the project. Like, where am I going to play? Am I going to play in front of Bissouma? Well, probably not. Am I going to play in front of Maddison? Well, probably not. Am I going to compete with Sarr? Well, maybe, possibly. But if there's ever an injury to Bissouma, you're straight in there because you can handle that. If there's a suspension to Bissouma, and there will be, I'd imagine lots of them because of the kind of requirements of the 6. Sometimes you have to sacrifice some discipline to slow the plays down. And what about James Maddison? He's been picking up a knock. And we don't know if Lo Celso's happy or not. Rumours are that he's unhappy one day, happy the next, injured. I don't know about Lo Celso, that's for a different conversation. But with Conor Gallagher, I think you've got a player that if he's coming off the bench, you know he can do things. And just to give you, a couple of examples, the reason why he's got, I think, an average 7.41 this season in his 8 performances for Chelsea is because his ratio of contribution is really high. I think he's created 3 key passes. He's already got an assist, but he's also in the top, I think, 5 or 10% of players this season for defensive responsibilities alongside that kind of creative edge in terms of interceptions, tackles per 90, and clearances. His progressive passes are up there. Like, he really is someone that can contribute in a number of different ways. But at Chelsea, he is behind so much expensive talent. I wouldn't necessarily always say that expensiveness or cost equals value, because Chelsea this season, and at least until the last couple of games, haven't really, hit the ground running at all. But they're starting to turn the corner now, and you might see Conor Gallagher's chances and time limited. Whether or not Chelsea are going to deal with Tottenham is obviously the elephant in the room. I think we did try to make something happen on deadline day, but it couldn't work because we couldn't get Hojbjerg out the door. But if all those things can materialise, I'd have absolutely no problem with Conor Gallagher coming in. He absolutely raises the level of the bench. I have absolutely no concerns with him coming on as a sub for any number of players in the squad. And I think he's exactly the sort of player that Ange Postecoglou would love. He's a brilliant trainer. He wants to learn. He's an absolute workhorse. He works tirelessly for the team. Not afraid to get stuck in, and also has the ability to find the pass and get about it and score goals. And we've already seen this season how many times our system allows for Pape Sarr and Ollie Skip, when he's been in there, to get up and join in and get into the box. And I think that Conor Gallagher's got probably a better finish on him than both of those players at this stage, at least. And so, consequently, I think it makes a lot of sense. Price might be prohibitive. They want a lot of money for him. But I would be very much for it. Let me know your thoughts. The other option, guys, is another English player. Another player who's been in and around the England team, but ultimately isn't getting enough minutes at his club. And that is Kalvin Phillips. Now, Kalvin Phillips, for me, is a player that I've loved and admired for a long time. I remember back watching him for Leeds United at Tottenham a few years ago, him playing that quarterback role, sitting at the back of or sitting just in front of the back four, collecting the ball and spraying it long. He's got a wonderful long pass on him when he's in the mood. He's a real tenacious player. I liked him in when he was playing an international setup a few years ago in tournaments, in the World Cup and in the Euros. I just think he went to Manchester City on big money, 150 grand a week. Didn't really get played. And it must be eating him alive to see, without Rodri in the team, he still can't get any real minutes because they decided to use Rico Lewis, who's 18 years old, instead. I'd be very surprised if Kalvin Phillips isn't given a loan in January. I think from what I'm understood, from what I've read, Kalvin Phillips was offered the chance to leave in the summer, but he turned it down. He didn't want to. He wanted to fight for his place. And obviously it hasn't gone well. Now, I don't think you become a bad player overnight. Obviously there's the variable about has too much money made him lazy. I'm not sure. That's just speculative. But I think he is someone that can come in and compete with Bissouma. Obviously, I don't think he has the utility or the versatility quite like Conor Gallagher does, or a lot of the players that we're looking for. But I think you could bring in Kalvin Phillips into that 6 role. And remember, if there is an injury somewhere else to a Pape Sarr, then absent not knowing what Bentancur's situation is like, you can move Bissouma into the 8 absolutely easily, superbly, with ease. That didn't make any sense. With consummate ease. And he'll pick up that role and play the Sarr role very comfortably. And I think then you can play Kalvin Phillips in the 6. I don't know if you could play Kalvin Phillips in the 8, in the deeper 8. Certainly not in the 10. But for me, I think Kalvin Phillips is a really, really good player. Again, whether or not Manchester City will deal with Tottenham remains to be seen. Rumours are out today that Manchester City are open to loaning him, and the 2 teams that are up the top of the list are Everton and Newcastle. Now, I could understand Manchester City doing a deal with Everton because there's no real threat from Everton in Manchester City's case. Does Manchester City look at Tottenham and Newcastle and see a threat? Do they view Tottenham and Newcastle as the same threat? Does the relationship between Pep and Daniel Levy, mean that phone call won't even be answered? Not sure. But as a player, I think Kalvin Phillips is a wonderful talent, a precocious talent, and someone that Tottenham would really benefit from. Again, levelling up on the bench, and I'd have absolutely no concerns seeing him come off. And in the case of injuries, I'd have absolutely no concerns with either of them starting in the 11 without seeing a massive drop-off to what we currently see if we have to rely on Hojbjerg, who is being shoehorned into a position that doesn't suit, and Ollie Skip, who really just isn't of the level that we need if we want to be entertaining the idea, if not this season, that next season we can put on some sort of title run. You have to call it as you see it. I'd love you to call it as you see it. Let me know if you think that Kalvin Phillips would be an interesting option, and whether or not Conor Gallagher is someone that you like and value the same level I do. I guess the last thing I'll say is that both of them are going to come with an English tax and put those prices 20% higher than they would otherwise be if those players were French or German or whatever. And I'm not entirely sure if Tottenham are going to need to worry so much about homegrown numbers going forward, given the amount of talent that we've got that we can utilise from our under-21s if necessary. I haven't crunched the numbers on it to figure out whether or not, if we were to sell Ollie Skip, would there be a problem in that regard. Again, let me know. But I just think that money is obviously always tight. The way we go about our business and negotiations prohibits unnecessary expense. And I just don't know whether or not the English tax on Kalvin Phillips and on Conor Gallagher will put them out of our price range on relative valuations. Interesting one. But I can understand why ANGE would look at both of those players and think, could do me a bit of them. Let me know your thoughts though, guys. Anyone else you think that could step up, step in, better value for cheaper? I'm sure there are. But today I just wanted to talk about those two. There's loads of other players we've spoken about in the past that could slip into the 6 or in the midfield role from Europe. But for me, those two are in the news. Therefore I bring them to you. And I'd love to know your thoughts. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, bye-bye.